But right now we have an incredibly important conversation, and it's one that is, I think it's full of some good news, although we're still so concerned about the future of this nation and its attitudes and policies on the topic of abortion coming from the top down. We could look to the White House and see Barack Obama talking about people being punished with a child. We see David Toscano. We see Herring, the king of lawlessness, and we see Ralph Northam and Terry McAuliffe wrapping themselves in these dirty, bloody flags of Planned Parenthood as if it's something to be proud of. They should be ashamed. And yet we do have good news to report to you today. So I welcome back to the Schilling Show here in studio today, Martha Cassell, and on the line with us, long distance from Texas, Steve Lopez, both wonderful pro-life activists and prayer warriors. And Martha and Steve, welcome to the Schilling Show.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you both here. And Steve, we miss you in Charlottesville, but we know that you continue to work because I've seen some recent information that you send out to the people that are on your list. And tell us about the current state of the pro-life movement, not just in Charlottesville, but across America.
I think, it's alive and well. The 40 Days for Life has been growing across America and other sort of grassroots efforts. The abortion numbers per capita are at their lowest rate since abortion became legal in 1973. So I think all the grassroots efforts from all the pro-lifers all across America have been very successful.
You know, Steve, when you tell me that the numbers are down, that means there should be cause for rejoicing on the pro-death and the pro-life sides, because what they have said consistently until very recently is keep abortion safe, legal, and rare. So they should be celebrating too, right?
They should be, although I don't think they are celebrating. What they tend to do is focus on all the new restrictions that have occurred, and at least the pro-death organizations focus on the grassroots efforts that have occurred. A lot of the lobbying that has occurred that has restricted. It's not even so much as a restriction as much as it has increased healthcare standards across the United States, and they've been focused mainly on that, but the pro-life community has definitely been rejoicing.
Martha Cassell, you have been involved locally with 40 Days for Life and really beyond the 40 days in groups of people that are meeting out on the sidewalk in front of Planned Parenthood and just praying. Tell us what that's like and what motivates you to do that.
Well, what motivates me to do that is my regret for my own abortion, which I had over 30 years ago and which I still regret to this day. And there's another clinic in addition to Planned Parenthood where a group of us also spend time, and people come over from Stanton as well, and they pray there. And sometimes we have as many as 25 people out there at this little clinic on Commonwealth Drive, which is really sort of a neighborhood. You know, it is a neighborhood. There's a little commercial area at one end where this clinic is, but it's in a house. It looks like just somebody's residence. And I think most of the neighborhood there, well, some of them are waking up because we do stand out there with signs, and they know something's going on there. But we pray. We pray out there. We fast, and we've made a difference, apparently. I mean, God's the one who makes the changes. We just show up and do what we know we're supposed to do.
What a dirty feeling it must be for neighbors who are living in that vicinity. I mean, this affects the entire community, but specifically, if you're living in a neighborhood and there's somebody there running an abortuary out of a house, what looks like a house, to think, oh, I'm living next to this, and think of what's really going on here. I think, Steve and Martha, that the other side here, the pro-death side, doesn't ever really want to say exactly what they're doing because it's so hideous, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, they want to talk about everything but the truth. And so because when you confront the truth of it, which is a baby with a beating heart and a developing brain, little arms, little legs, being dismembered, that's hard to sell. So instead they sell the lie. They'll talk about an undifferentiated mass of cells or try to get the discussion away from the baby altogether. Because if we go to the baby and we look at the truth of what's happening to the baby, people have a really difficult time accepting that. Even people who are pro-choice, when you start talking about what's actually happening, a baby with a beating heart and a developing brain being dismembered, they have trouble saying, yeah, I'm excited about that.
And so we see efforts, and I think you've covered this in some of your previous emails, but we see efforts across the country now to ban pictures and photographic evidence of what's going on. Martha, do you think that's a reasonable standard so that we just don't offend people?
We've got to offend people because people are so apathetic and so full of denial. They really don't want to believe it. One night, a couple of months ago, we had a gentleman from Stanton bring over one of those signs from the Center for Bioethical Reform that has the body parts of the aborted baby on the sign. Boy, what a flap that raised that night amongst the clinic workers as well as bystanders. We actually had a Christian woman who's never stopped there before stop and come and tell us that she thought the sign was inappropriate because we have to be, quote, loving to people. Well, in my mind, being loving is telling somebody the truth because we all know nobody's going to heaven without the truth because God is truth. And we have to have a radical change of heart and conduct in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's what this is about ultimately.
It truly is. And I think about, let's say we had an opportunity in World War II to have put the pictures that we've all seen since of the victims of the Nazi death camps and all of that, and to put it out there for the world to see, the piles of bodies, which are so hideous to look at. Would these same people have said, no, well, that's just too offensive and we need to show love to people? I can't imagine that anybody would take that position today. Steve?
I agree with you, and I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. And within the Christian community, it's interesting because we embrace the crucifix, right? Which is Christ on a cross being murdered, and nobody has an issue with that. And some of the people who have issues with the graphic images will be wearing crucifixes, which is interesting. So I think it's just a matter of people, because I think I agree with everybody. It's definitely a shocking image, but sometimes the truth is shocking. The images of the concentration camps, the images of slavery, all of those things were horrific, but the people who were holding those images didn't do it. The people who are holding the images are trying to stop that from happening. And sometimes you'll get into interesting conversations when they realize that, like, their reaction about the image should be their reaction about the abortionist in their community who's actually doing that. Instead, sometimes they want to focus on the messenger when they eventually realize that, hey, there's a message here and there's somebody who's doing that. Some of them come around and realize that, I need to stand up and do something about this in my community.
All of our eyes should be wide open when we approach this subject. Let's go to the phones and say hello to Franklin. Franklin, you're on with Steve Lopez and Martha Cassell. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, good afternoon. I agree with your cause, no question about that. But some of the methods you use with posting the pictures that you post and distributing them into mailboxes caused me, in my particular case, to address an issue with my children because they had seen these images at an age when it was inappropriate for them to have had to deal with that. I just would wish there were a way that you could portray these images in a way that it's controlled so that people who don't want to deal with it with their young children don't have to, and that's the issue that I have.
Franklin, it's a really good point. I've not had to talk with my own children about this subject yet because I don't even think they could possibly fathom it. At some point it will become an issue and we'll need to talk about it. But Steve and Martha, perhaps, could I get a response to Franklin's concern? Because I think it's a valid one.
Yeah, no, and I hear where he's coming from, and so what I try to do is think about what would we do in World War II. What would we do if we were in Germany and we were next to a concentration camp? Is there any way for us to bring attention to the community about, let's say the concentration camp? We held up an image of what was going on in the concentration camp. Would we not hold that image because possibly somebody might be offended in the community, or do we realize that maybe the greater good is so high that sometimes one of the unfortunate casualties is that, parents are going to have to discuss this issue with their children. And I've noticed, if the folks that, who their ministry is to hold these graphic images, a lot of times the children's reaction is a ministry to the parents, because the children's reaction, they're not involved in all the rationalizations for a lot of the parents who have been silent on these issues. A lot of the children turn to their parents and are shocked that this could even happen, right? And then, of course, they wonder, what's being done to stop this. They actually have an honest reaction to this, which I think a lot of times ministers to the parents and gets them to think about becoming active in the community.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, because I think kids, they simply couldn't fathom that adults would do this, and they're so much closer to their own birth and understand that they're not far from that point, and it does seem inconceivable. It's 1246 here on the Schilling Show. 977-1070 is the phone number. Steve Lopez and Martha Cassell are our guests. We welcome you. Perhaps you're a supporter of Planned Parenthood and would like to issue a challenge. We welcome that here on this program. All points of view are welcome. Ellie stands by, 977-1070. When we get back on the other side, we do have some good news and some specific numbers about abortions here in the Charlottesville area. So stand by. We'll give you that update when the Schilling Show returns. And you're back with the Schilling Show. You know, we're not afraid of this topic of abortion, and we talk about it very frankly because there are too few people who are willing to have this conversation. Instead, want to stick their head in the sand. Steve Lopez, Martha Cassell, our guests here, and we welcome you at 977-1070. Martha, I know you kind of wanted to follow up on where we left off before on these pictures and kids, and why it's important for us to really just make sure that this is so horrible and considered that way societally.
Right. Well, I don't want children to be exposed to these horrific images, but the parents have got to wake up, and we have to start at the very earliest age to make it clear that an abortion is an unthinkable topic, that each person walking the face of this earth belongs to God. We are given charge of these people. That's our responsibility, to raise these children in truth. And so I don't really like that idea of the horrible pictures, but that is the truth. And how did we get to 56 million abortions? And that's just the ones we know about. And now you can go to the store and get a pill that kills a baby. So we don't even know about those numbers. Plus, those are carcinogenic chemicals that women talk about. The war on women, that's the war on women right there. And that's, we don't even have any numbers on that. So it's way out of hand. Extreme situations require extreme measures. And as I was telling Rob earlier, I've never put those pictures in people's mailboxes, and I've never seen those in my own mailbox. So I'm very sorry if that happened to that gentleman who called in. But no one that I pray with on the sidewalk has done anything like that.
Steve, before we run out of time, I did want to ask you for the numbers. We have abortuaries, 3 of them here. One's at Planned Parenthood, one's at another facility that we referenced earlier. I don't know the name of it. And then there's also the University of Virginia. Would you tell us what's going on numbers-wise?
Yeah, so there was a total of 935 abortions in 2013, which is down approximately 11.2% in the city of Charlottesville. And overall, the numbers are down quite dramatically. Actually, the number I just gave you is for across the state of Virginia. The numbers specifically in Charlottesville are for Fitzhugh's Clinic, which is on 2321 Commonwealth Drive. They're down 22%, which is, I think, a result of Martha and all the other pro-lifers who are there every day that he does abortions every Wednesday night. At Planned Parenthood, they're down 6.6%. And then at the University of Virginia Hospital, they're down 4.2%.
Well, those are remarkable numbers, and we're grateful to God for these sorts of results. You know, we recently had a press conference here. It was during the last election, and we had Democrat David Toscano, who sometimes professes a Catholic faith, along with a Democrat leader, Linda Seaman, coming out to a park and basically mocking God when Ken Cuccinelli made a statement that God's judgment and wrath will be upon America for the scourge of abortion and what we're doing. And they were mocking him. Oh, we want Ken Cuccinelli to tell us just what God's going to do to America. Ha, ha, ha. Is there a biblical precedent, historical precedent for God judging nations? And is this the sort of thing that God will judge over?
I think the historical precedent is slavery. And you look at what Thomas Jefferson said, who was conflicted and owned slaves but fought against slavery. You know, he said that, you know, he trembles to think that God is just and his justice will not sleep forever. And you look at the cost that we paid for slavery was a civil war. Hundreds of thousands of people, Americans, died to end slavery. So there was a high cost, and obviously that rocked the nation. And I think you look at, we've already had 56 million abortions that we know about, a lot of families destroyed. We've already had a high cost, and I think whenever there's great evil, eventually the justice of God gets around to it. So I think we can just look at our own history with slavery and see what happens when we perpetuate evil over a long period of time.
We've got about a minute left. Martha, tell us about, I know you work with a lot of young people in this, because this is not just something for middle-aged or older people. What is the attitude of young people that you work with and pray with toward abortion?
I have so much hope because of the young people that I have been privileged to come to know in this pro-life effort. This is truly the pro-life generation. I don't know if you happened to see the March for Life on TV that happened back in January.
I did not get a
22nd.
chance.
Oh, my gosh, it was amazing. The temperatures were brutal, and they just jokingly called it a day of penance. Everybody there was so grateful to be there and so full of joy to be doing this right thing of standing up for life, and no matter the conditions. So that's truly what I see happening. The Students for Life group, there are just so many pro-life organizations that are being raised up now and supported, particularly by the young people.
Steve Lopez, we've got just about 30 seconds left. If people want to be in contact with you, what's the best way they can do so?
They can email me at slopez@spiritusfilms.com, or they could give me a phone call at 832-882-3825.
I want to thank you both, Steve Lopez, Martha Cassell, for coming in and having this conversation with this community. We need to do it, and we need to do it frequently. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
All righty. That's a hard one, but it's something that we do need to be talking about, and you need to hear what's going on right here at the University of Virginia, over at Fitzhugh's Place, and at the Planned Parenthood. Okay, Schilling Show will be back in just a few moments. We'll have open phones and also a letter to the editor from an unexpected source. Even a stopped clock is right twice a day. In this letter, maybe multiple times a day. You're not going to believe it. Schilling Show, we'll get to that at the top of the next hour. Stay with us.